Bring Professor McGonagall, Voldemort instructed. Hermione nodded and slipped away with Ron, while Voldemort resumed casting dark curses decisively. Between curses, he used counterspells, creating chaos and leaving Snape confused. How many people were really involved in this? Hermione moved quickly. Soon, Snape was under fire, and Voldemort stopped all spells. Harry regained full control of his broom, dove, and astonishingly skimmed the ground to catch the golden snitch. Talent aside, none of that mattered now. Voldemort approached Hermione. Professor McGonagall watched Snape put out flames with a stern expression. "Is it really him?" Voldemort asked, already knowing the answer. "Yes, we need to see the headmaster," McGonagall said gravely. She hadn't even noticed Gryffindor had won. "All right, should we arrest him?" Voldemort frowned. "Might be tough for the two of us. Shall we call Headmistress Flitwick?" McGonagall shook her head. "No need. The headmaster will handle it." Voldemort nodded, adopting a deferential stance. "Hermione and Ron, come with us," McGonagall said, leading the way toward the castle. Voldemort walked at the back, glancing over his shoulder to meet Snape's eyes. "Good luck, traitor." "Are you all certain?" From Dumbledore's expression, everyone could tell he was surprised. "Yes, I examined it thoroughly," Professor McGonagall replied. Dumbledore then turned toward Voldemort, clearly seeking his opinion. "It's a curse," Voldemort confirmed. "I observed it through my telescope." Then, "Hermione, please explain the details," Dumbledore said. Hermione straightened up immediately and began detailing her findings, with Ron occasionally chiming in to support her. The headmaster furrowed his brow but nodded occasionally as he absorbed the information. When they finished, he waved his wand, and several sheets of parchment fluttered from the bookshelf, spreading out before him. Voldemort glanced over and recognized the documents were all about Snape. His eyes landed on a familiar name, Theodore Nott. Theodore was the son of Voldemort's old friend, Geraint Nott, and now in the same year as Malfoy. Voldemort had noticed him before, but hadn't been in contact recently. Not due to distrust, the Knotts were steadfast, like Voldemort's earliest followers back when the Death Eaters were called the Knights of Walpurgis, but because the Knotts were reclusive and straightforward. During his period of lying low, Voldemort didn't want to involve friends who might attract trouble. What connection did Theodore Nott have to this case? Voldemort wondered. He didn't want to drag his old friend or his son into any mess. As Voldemort pondered, Dumbledore sat quietly, eyes scanning the papers repeatedly, brows knitted tightly as he pieced the puzzle together. "All right, Hermione, Ron, thank you," Dumbledore finally said, lifting his gaze to the two children. "But I have one request, and I hope you will agree." "Whatever you say, Headmaster, we'll do it," Hermione responded immediately, puffing out her chest. Ron nodded vigorously beside her, silently adding, "Me too." "Let him walk through the mist, child. You may guide him, but do not give him the answers directly. He must discover them himself." The two children exchanged puzzled glances. Dumbledore removed his crescent-shaped glasses and rubbed the corners of his eyes, clearly exhausted. "Kilo, I want you to help me explain the reasoning," Dumbledore said to Voldemort. "With your intelligence, I assume you've already figured it out, haven't you?" Voldemort nodded without hesitation and looked directly at the children. "The headmaster is guiding Harry, giving just enough clues for him to find the answers on his own. This is a course prepared specifically for the chosen savior." Voldemort's words left the children wide-eyed. "Headmaster, you mean you're controlling all of this? Watching over Harry? And you know we've been searching for Nicholas Flamel." Hermione stopped herself, and Dumbledore nodded, confirming he was aware. "If it weren't for your knowledge about Snape," Dumbledore waved his hand, and the scattered papers reassembled themselves, "I wouldn't have involved you." "You don't intend to confront Snape?" Hermione asked, shocked. This time Ron remained silent, frozen, his mind struggling to process it all. "The time hasn't come. Besides, I am more interested in the person behind him than Snape himself." Dumbledore winked at Hermione. "All right, children. The noise outside tells me Gryffindor has won. You should go celebrate." Hermione nodded, still puzzled, and excused herself. Ron followed like a puppet, his mind completely fried. "Headmaster, leaving Snape at the school isn't safe?" Once the children were gone, McGonagall voiced her concern. "He could be a hidden pawn planted by that person long ago." Dumbledore frowned, pondering, but didn't reply immediately. McGonagall glanced at Voldemort, hoping he'd side with her. He merely shrugged. Wolves dislike false alarms. Nonsense is best ignored. Voldemort, Dumbledore spoke suddenly, startling both. McGonagall blinked, and Voldemort almost responded but held back, irritation simmering. Why call me for no reason? With his intellect, he could make such arrangements, but his later wisdom. He didn't finish, but the meaning was clear. McGonagall frowned, displeased. She cared little for Voldemort's smarts. She wanted the school safe. Voldemort frowned too, sensing criticism but finding no reason to argue, leaving him uneasy. All right, let things continue. As for Snape, Kilo, you'll watch him. Dumbledore finally resolved. Let me do it. Kilo doesn't know him well enough, McGonagall offered. You can't. Everyone knows I trust you most, and your temper. Dumbledore laughed, and Voldemort joined in. McGonagall, frustrated, glared at Voldemort instead. All right, McGonagall, I'll handle everything. You should go back now. Gryffindor won the Quidditch match. You should be happy. I should be, but Snape makes me unhappy. And you too, she huffed, daring to challenge anyone. After complaining, she nodded and left. Everyone knew she'd ultimately obey Dumbledore. Sit down, Kilo. Once we find the person, things will get much easier, Dumbledore said, sitting and turning to Voldemort. That person is with Snape? Voldemort asked, curious. So they're hiding in Snape's office? Of course not. Likely a restless spirit. I can't be certain yet. More clues are needed. They could be among the children. There are many loyal Death Eaters. Dumbledore conjured 2 drinks and gestured for Voldemort to take one. Including that Malfoy? Voldemort asked. Is he giving you trouble again? I caused the trouble myself, Dumbledore said, smiling. He's in quite a mess now. One wrong move and he could lose his board position. A pleased smile spread across Voldemort's face, though inside he thought, good luck to you, my friend. Keep an eye on Snape, but don't be too obvious. Apply a little pressure, understood? Dumbledore instructed. But I can't beat him, Voldemort replied, frowning. Dumbledore pressed a hand to his forehead. Kilo, you're a Ravenclaw, not a Gryffindor. Use your brain. He tapped his temple, and Voldemort understood immediately. By the way, any progress on that spell you're researching? Dumbledore asked. Voldemort perked up. He'd wanted to ask countless times but dared not. There was no reason to put himself at risk. Not yet, he admitted, casting a repair charm that hovered in midair. I've mostly ruled out time-related properties in this magic, but I haven't identified any other traits. Do you have any special talents in magic? Dumbledore asked. Voldemort looked into Dumbledore's bright blue eyes, puzzled, shaking his head. Before formal training, the biggest differences in a wizard's abilities usually reflect innate talent, Dumbledore explained. Think back to your childhood. Did you show anything unusual? Voldemort nodded slightly, lowering his head to think. Linzor had dismissed such questions. Before rebirth as a transmigrator, he had no talents, magical or mundane, except dreaming. But Voldemort had natural gifts. Parseltongue, telekinesis, a persuasive charisma, almost like an innate memory charm. No, Professor, Voldemort replied quickly, raising his head. I'm Muggle-born. Before my letter arrived, I showed nothing remarkable. Dumbledore nodded, though a shadow of disappointment crossed his eyes. Child, that complicates matters. Wizards tend to follow their natural talents. Breaking beyond those limits is very difficult. Chapter 88. The Curse of Knowledge. Disappointment flickered across Voldemort's face, but deep down he hoped to fuse the Horcruxes soon. He was certain that the day the Horcruxes returned would be the day his talent was reforged. Is there truly no other way, Headmaster? He asked, his expression grim. Dumbledore paused, then sighed. Knowledge can change talent. As a Ravenclaw, you understand this, but have you heard of the Curse of Knowledge? Voldemort frowned. This was new to him. It's not a curse set by anyone, just a term, Dumbledore said. It means that once someone possesses certain knowledge, they can no longer imagine how that knowledge looks to someone who doesn't know it. Voldemort considered it, the room silent except for Dumbledore sipping his drink. So, Voldemort said, you can do something but can't teach others, not because it's a secret, but because you can't think that way anymore. His explanation was clumsy, but Dumbledore nodded. That's why our predecessors broke magic down into spells, gestures, and aids, to make learning easier. But compared to innate talent, these are nothing. Rarely did Dumbledore speak with such blunt certainty. To demonstrate, He reached for a small silver trinket on the table. Its surface began shifting and changing continuously. When I was young, before I had a wand, I could make objects transform. It was amazing, but I had no idea why or how. Voldemort stared, sensing faint magic, but barely any power, a display of extraordinary transfiguration talent. Parseltongue, telekinesis, persuasive speech, he thought of his own self-taught gifts. When I began learning magic, our transfiguration classes were slow. I grasped change without incantations. The trinket morphed from a mouse to a spider. Did you focus on developing this talent deliberately? Voldemort asked. No need. Talent guides growth naturally, Dumbledore replied, restoring the trinket to its original form. Headmaster, Voldemort said, frowning, this shouldn't be called the curse of knowledge. It's more like a curse of talent. No, Dumbledore shook his head. A shallow basin inscribed with runes floated onto the desk. Voldemort recognized it as a meditation basin. Talent becomes knowledge. Otherwise, how was ancient magic passed down? Were spells made up by one person? As he spoke, Dumbledore tapped his wand against his temple, silver strands drifting into the basin. Voldemort remained uneasy. If he entered the basin soon, his soul would be exposed. Imagine, Dumbledore turns and sees. Ah, Mr. Riddle, what a coincidence. It would be a social nightmare, but to refuse such an opportunity was impossible. Creature, he whispered within his soul, awakening the entity. This is roughly how it will go. Next, you face the headmaster. Act like this. After a quick exchange, they switched control. Voldemort retreated deep into the blood curse, observing everything from afar. This was supposed to be my moment. Mine. All mine. The curse of knowledge prevents me from fully explaining how I grasped a higher level of transfiguration through words or writing. But I believe this process will enlighten you, Dumbledore finished, his eyes warm as they rested on Quirrell. Voldemort snorted. Kindness? More like probing. Very well, Headmaster. Quirrell rose and approached the table, bowing his head without hesitation. Voldemort couldn't quite pinpoint what he felt, only that his body shivered briefly. Dumbledore followed his gaze toward the Pensieve. In the vast headmaster's office, only Voldemort, still hidden by the blood curse, remained, along with Fawkes the Phoenix, preening lazily. After some time, Quirrell's soul settled, and Dumbledore stood as well, careful not to rush, returning the Pensieve to its spot. Both the Pensieve and a wand were deeply personal items, objects even buried with a wizard in death. How do you feel? Any insights? Dumbledore asked once everything was in place. Feign thoughtfulness. Don't rush your answer, Voldemort quickly interjected. I need to think, Headmaster, Quirrell said, brow furrowed. Dumbledore nodded, sipping his drink with an ease Voldemort noted. Clearly, he was satisfied with the probe's outcome. Quirrell, Voldemort urged anxiously. If you can't reveal the results, just say you gained many insights and need to return to your office to process them fully. Don't speak recklessly. If you have questions, ask. I wouldn't dare speak to him, Quirrell thought. Headmaster, I've gained many insights, but I'd like to return to my office, organize my thoughts, and record everything. I'm afraid I might forget something important if distracted, Quirrell explained. All right. I was going to take you out for a walk to help you perceive my breakthrough differently. But let's wait until you've digested this first, Dumbledore said casually. Quirrell immediately stood, thanked him, and hurried off, brows furrowed as if eager to capture every detail. After he left, Dumbledore stretched and spread several sheets of paper across his desk, then picked up a blank sheet. Snape, primary suspect, must be thoroughly investigated. He wrote that first, then copied several names from another sheet, including Voldemort's son, Theodore Nott. But Quirrell's name was absent. It seemed Dumbledore truly trusted him now. If Voldemort knew all this, who could say if he'd laugh with pig-like glee? Chapter 89, Time Converter. Professor Quirrell seemed to be in a foul mood again. Students all noticed. This wasn't unusual. Older girls even joked he must be a woman in disguise, given how gloomy he got every month. Quirrell, what's wrong? Flitwick asked, playing both father and mother, showing genuine concern. Nothing, Headmaster. Just troubled by a question, Voldemort lied. He wasn't troubled at all. Despite everything Quirrell had witnessed, Voldemort never asked him about it. Even when Quirrell tried, Voldemort refused to listen. He knew how crucial Quirrell's vision was, a shortcut to breaking his talent barrier before his Horcruxes returned. Yet he forbade Quirrell from describing it, fearing subjective judgment might taint his own understanding of Dumbledore's breakthrough. First impressions are hard to erase, and Voldemort refused to let that happen. Of course, this left him less than happy. The cake was right there, but no fork in sight. Eating with hands spoiled the flavor. Uncomfortable indeed. One mid-December morning, Hogwarts awoke to several feet of snow blanketing the grounds, the lake frozen solid. On the way to the training grounds, Voldemort was ambushed by the Weasley twins, an attempt thwarted by Percy's intervention. "Trying to spend Christmas in the infirmary, you two little rascals?" Percy shouted, harshly using magic to subdue his younger brothers. The twins exchanged bitter smiles, then turned pleading eyes toward Voldemort. They had a good relationship, often meeting during night walks. "Just joking, Percy. No need to be so harsh," Voldemort told him. "Don't let me catch you disrespecting the professors again. I won't just deduct points. I'll use a dark curse on you," Percy snarled before releasing them. Percy was no longer the boy he had been 6 months ago. He carried authority, had built a small loyal circle, and outsiders might mistake him for a professor without his robes. "Percy, you're getting more unreasonable by the day. We'll tell Mum you've been corrupted by power. Watch out for our revenge rat. He's right in Ron's hands. Professor Kilo's even kinder than you. At this rate, you'll never find a wife." The twins bantered and ran off, leaving Percy scowling. Though they respected him, their jabs always hit their mark. "They're always like this. Don't take it personally. Come on, Hodell's waiting for you," Voldemort said, leading him to the training grounds. With the holidays approaching, everyone was relaxing, and professors had eased up on homework. The grounds, usually bustling, were even more crowded today. "There are quite a few kids. They enjoy it here," Voldemort said with a smile. "All thanks to you. I can see their skills improving," Percy replied, puffing out his chest, flattering Voldemort, who took it well. "I hope you make progress today, Percy. I'll give you at most half a month. Some older students are already mastering the Patronus charm." Voldemort led him straight to where the Dementor Hodel was stationed. "The fight with Slytherin drained my energy, or I'd have mastered it already," Percy said stubbornly. "Not half a month, Professor. 3 days, and I'll have it down perfectly." "Even better. But I'm not letting you use that thing," Voldemort said, lowering his voice. "You brought it with you, didn't you?" "Yes, Professor. I'll hand it over once we reach the back of the training grounds," Percy replied quietly. Voldemort nodded, satisfied, and called to Hagrid, who was building a snowman nearby. "Hagrid, find Headmaster Flitwick and have him strengthen the snowman's magic. Your spells aren't reliable." "I know, Kilo. If you have time, come help. I'm swamped." Hagrid called back, genuinely tired. Christmas trees, snowmen, guarding the training grounds, watching the Forbidden Forest. Voldemort thought, if he were overloaded with so many tasks without a serious pay raise, he wouldn't agree. But Hagrid never asked for much. "I'm training assistants. When they're strong enough, we'll be free." "Hang in there, Hagrid," Voldemort said, pushing the kind giant further. Hagrid tapped his chest, then pointed at Voldemort. "I trust you." Voldemort tapped his own chest back and quickened his pace, leaving. Bullying the honest only brings shame. They soon passed through the maze-like training grounds and reached the deepest part, where the Dementor Hodel lounged in a hot spring Hagrid had prepared. Upon seeing Voldemort and Percy, he glanced toward the stone wall behind the enclosure. "Hodel, drain his happiness, but don't let him die," Voldemort said, extending his hand to Percy. Percy produced a small, glowing golden time turner, its delicate chain gleaming. "Wrap the chain around yourself, then." "I've used it, Percy." Voldemort cut him off and motioned for him to approach the Dementor while he headed toward a nearby safe house. "Want to give it a try?" he muttered, turning it over in his hands, unable to resist. He'd long been curious about this artifact. In Lin Zuo's memories, countless online debates called it the #1 magical artifact in the HP world. Forget the Elder Wand or Invisibility Cloak. Compared to this, they were trivial. Before, he hadn't dared approach because Dumbledore's presence was oppressive. Now, with Dumbledore distracted by Snape and having gained trust, he could experiment safely. But this thing isn't exactly friendly to adult wizards. If something goes wrong, after hesitating, Voldemort couldn't decide. In the end, he pulled Percy aside to demonstrate the time turner. Following Percy's careful movements, the device began to spin smoothly. Voldemort's eyes widened, fixed on him. Whoosh! A breeze swirled around Percy, and Voldemort saw him blur slightly, then vanish. Professor, how did it feel? Percy reappeared as the door opened. You were there the whole time? Voldemort asked, suddenly remembering. When Hodel looked back earlier, was he looking at you? Percy nodded. Instructions say the same version of me can't meet itself. It could cause accidents. Maybe not. Voldemort nodded, not probing further. So many great minds had failed to unravel the grandfather paradox. He wasn't about to waste energy. I'll keep studying it. You keep practicing your spells. Percy nodded obediently and left, leaving Voldemort alone to dive deeper into his research. Chapter 90. Quality Issues. After much hesitation, Voldemort ultimately didn't dare try it himself. Research demanded sacrifice, but losing his life was too high a price. He thought that when the opportunity arose, he'd visit the Ministry of Magic to study records on how the device was made, perhaps a safer path to understanding it. Still, he couldn't abandon the research. The artifact was too alluring. With a transmigrator's soul, he constantly craved knowledge of time and space's secrets. Split apart. Pointing his wand at the time converter, Voldemort cast a moderate spell. It could separate objects, sometimes even shatter them. Creak. The delicate chains tightened but didn't break. He couldn't tell if it was due to insufficient power or if the device was exceptionally sturdy, perhaps even anti-magic. Reveal true form. This spell investigated mechanisms or curses with magical perception. Nothing changed. There seems to be something special inside, Voldemort murmured, lifting the device toward the light. Though the spell showed nothing, magical sensing revealed a core inside, like a crystal, or perhaps solidified air. Hard to describe, but it felt strange. Mystery manifest. The time converter twitched, as if tapped by an invisible pebble, but it didn't reveal what he hoped. I don't even know if that's the core. Too bad I don't know the exact name, otherwise I could try to manifest it. Unwilling to give up, Voldemort began casting a series of manifestation spells. Air, space-time, crystal, unknown. He had the patience to continue, but before long, Percy entered, interrupting his deep research. Not today, Professor. There's nothing left for Horder to feed on, Percy said, looking a little annoyed. Voldemort understood. Fine, give me half an hour more. I want to study it a bit longer, Voldemort insisted stubbornly. The device had to stay close to Percy, otherwise any special detection magic could alert the Ministry, creating a tangle of problems. All right, Professor. Percy didn't refuse. He had his own tasks, but if needed, he could travel through time and space anyway. The device was made for that exact purpose. Voldemort immersed himself in the work, casting every manifestation spell he could think of, yet nothing happened. Is this thing broken? Voldemort asked. Percy, I'll try sending it through with a stone and see what happens, Voldemort said. Professor, lifeless objects don't work, Percy replied helplessly. You tried? No. Well, practice makes perfect. Voldemort summoned a stone, carefully wrapped it in the time converter's delicate chain, set the time, and nothing. They stared at each other in awkward silence. Maybe we need a different approach. Use a living being. How about Horder? Voldemort suggested, brainstorming. Percy sighed deeply. Professor, if he goes back an hour, he could encounter himself, go insane, or worse. It's very risky, Percy warned. Voldemort nodded thoughtfully, conceding the point. Give me some more time. I just had a flash of inspiration, Voldemort said. Percy nodded, waiting nearby. After a while, Voldemort seemed struck by a new idea. He twisted the chains around and around, leaving Percy utterly baffled. Professor, what are you doing? Percy asked, partly curious, partly worried he might be a victim of another trick. I have a bold idea, Voldemort said, hands never stopping. What if it wraps around itself? Could it get lost in the river of time? Percy hesitated. He wanted to stop it, but there was no solid reason. After all, it was just an experiment, and besides, he didn't expect it to work. Objects without life shouldn't function with a time converter. The stone had proven that. Then, buzz! Percy was startled. Voldemort leapt back as a strange sound echoed. Before him appeared something bizarre, a space less than 20 centimeters wide, flickering with golden light. Occasionally, a shimmering, backward-flowing golden chain flashed past. Inside, vague, cloud-like shapes flickered, accompanied by chaotic tapping noises. Professor, it's moving on its own, Percy stammered, struggling to describe it. Yes, it sent itself into the river of time. Ha ha, my hypothesis was correct, Voldemort exclaimed. There's intelligence in there, or perhaps the manual's wrong. But, Percy was dumbfounded. How do we stop it? Voldemort stroked his chin thoughtfully. In theory, it's a paradox. It keeps sending itself back 1 hour, but I think it'll stop after an hour. Are you sure? Percy asked, eyes wide with hope. Voldemort smiled confidently. I'm sure. Professor, it hasn't stopped, Percy said grimly. Maybe another hour, Voldemort said firmly. Have faith, child. 2 hours later. Professor, it still hasn't stopped, Percy groaned. Third time's the charm, child. 1 more hour. Trust me. Voldemort remained calm. 3 hours later. Professor, it's still going. Should we keep waiting? Percy's face darkened, though he expected Voldemort to say yes. Don't worry, Percy. Go find Dumbledore. He'll fix it. Trust the headmaster. Voldemort's confidence never wavered. Percy was speechless, but eventually went to see the headmaster. Dumbledore studied the device with interest, but ultimately shrugged helplessly. Perhaps this will become a marvel of Hogwarts, he said optimistically, radiant as if emerging from darkness. But Percy's face turned deep purple. This is all under my name, Professor Headmaster. No need to involve students like this. Voldemort, still concerned for his student, quickly refocused Dumbledore. Percy needs a new time converter. This old one clearly isn't coming back. Dumbledore glanced between them, then said, Quality issues. Voldemort gave a thumbs up. Wise headmaster. He patted Percy on the back. Ask Professor McGonagall to help you write a request. This device has quality problems. Percy stared blankly at his professor and headmaster. This thing was clearly wrecked by that guy. And they're calling it a quality issue? Chapter 91, Repairing the Disappearing Cabinet. After receiving guidance from the headmaster and professors, Percy seemed to have actually learned something from them. Voldemort, for his part, was delighted by the headmaster's decision. The collaboration felt like the perfect balance of light and dark wizard kings, an unstoppable force. Everything was running smoothly, until Professor McGonagall stormed in like a lioness roaring. Even the headmaster lowered his head in silence. Percy thought the situation might spiral, but it didn't. After venting, McGonagall left abruptly, taking Percy with her to help write an application. Behave yourself, Kilo. McGonagall's been tense since that incident, Dumbledore quietly warned. I understand, Headmaster. I'll keep a close eye on Snape, Voldemort promptly pledged. That settled the matter for now. But follow-up issues remained. This spectacle needed careful oversight so students wouldn't get caught in the chaos. After the ordeal, Voldemort became more restrained and threw himself into Christmas decorations. Trying to win McGonagall's favor, he decked the halls in Gryffindor's red and gold, but it didn't earn him much goodwill. Kilo, there's too little blue and bronze. Ravenclaw students should see their colors at Christmas, Headmaster Flitwick gently pointed out. And the downstairs corridors need more yellow and black. Hufflepuff depends on them, Professor Sprout added plainly. Snape. Voldemort had no choice. He had to adjust the color scheme, costing several days and delaying major decorations like the Christmas tree and snowmen. When Hagrid and Flitwick asked when the big pieces would be set up, Voldemort just said he'd decide after finalizing the colors. One morning, checking the Marauder's map, he noticed the Old Bee wasn't on it. That sparked his motivation to tackle the big decorations. Still, he didn't rush. He waited, double-checked, and when by noon the Old Bee was still missing, he finally acted. That cabinet looks ugly. The second floor needs a snowman. Hagrid, move this, Voldemort said, clearly annoyed, pointing to a cabinet. Where to? Hagrid asked. Third floor. No. Fourth floor. The third floor will hold the Christmas tree, Voldemort replied. But the fourth floor also needs a snowman, and the blueprint shows no spare space. Hagrid frowned, studying the plans. There's space on the 7th floor, Hermione spoke up. Let's put it there for now. Voldemort agreed and sent Hagrid to move the cabinet while he and Hermione decorated the 2nd floor. As they worked up to the 7th floor, Hermione noticed the cabinet looked out of place. Surrounded by vibrant colors, it stuck out like a sore thumb. Voldemort had planned for this effect. Put it on the 8th floor then. Fewer people go there, Hermione suggested. Thanks for the trouble, Hagrid, Voldemort muttered, irritated. No matter where it went, the cabinet annoyed him. All right, Kilo, focus here. Don't let one cabinet get you down, Hagrid said cheerfully. No idea what use this junk is anyway, Voldemort grumbled and returned to work. Once the 7th floor was done, Hagrid and Hermione prepared to move to the 8th, but Voldemort spoke again. Class is about to start. Finish the rest after dinner. We're moving fast enough. Hermione and Hagrid agreed, and the three headed downstairs. After checking the Marauders' map on the 3rd floor, Voldemort slipped back up to the 8th floor. In front of the tapestry showing a troll being beaten by Dumbabanaba's club, Voldemort leapt sideways. Where's the hiding spot? Where's the hiding spot? Soon a door opened. Without a word, Voldemort tossed the disappearing cabinet inside and left, the steps surprisingly light. That night, the three returned to finish decorating the 8th floor and ran into Dumbledore coming back. Very nice, Kilo. You did well, the headmaster said before entering his office. It's all thanks to Hermione and Hagrid. They deserve medals, Voldemort joked. I'll seriously consider it, Dumbledore replied, then disappeared inside. Hermione and Hagrid were thrilled by the praise and completely forgot the missing cabinet. After finishing the 8th floor, they retraced their steps downstairs, found no issues, and dispersed. Hagrid invited Voldemort for drinks that evening, but he declined. Content after evening class, Voldemort pulled out the Marauders' map. Old Dumbledore had gone off again. He made his way to the 8th floor room of requirement and took out tools to repair the disappearing cabinet. What seemed difficult at first turned out differently once he started working. The cabinet was almost intact. No way. Voldemort checked the information Bakshin had provided repeatedly and found only a minor issue. Could it be that Draco's intelligence is the problem? Suspicious, Voldemort finished repairing the vanishing cabinet. Before using it, he finally found an excuse, perhaps the real reason, to blame Draco's intellect. The cabinet had indeed been damaged before, though not severely. But since no one knew about it, or how to repair it, it had sat unused at Hogwarts for years. By the time Draco fixed it, after Peeves had thrown it from the 2nd floor, the fall may have worsened the damage. In any case, it's usable now, Voldemort said, his gaze drifting toward the Ravenclaw diadem nearby. A flicker of hesitation crossed his face. Misjudging the cabinet's condition had left him slightly unprepared. Moving the box will require extreme caution. We must be careful. It's a Horcrux after all. It needs to be relocated immediately. Voldemort's attachment to his Horcruxes ran deep, especially to this one, which still held a fragment of his soul. Since arriving at Hogwarts, he had been meticulously careful, and now he resolved to send the diadem away overnight. Backup wand, Polyjuice potion, bag for the diadem. Quickly calculating, he confirmed Dumbledore was still on patrol and then returned resolutely to his office, ready to act, ready to steal it. The pressure of Dumbledore's presence weighed heavily on him. As he paced the 8th floor corridor, his eyes kept darting toward the headmaster's office, his mind crafting multiple excuses in case Dumbledore appeared. Fortunately, by the time he stepped into the vanishing cabinet, the headmaster was nowhere in sight. Being a thief. Thrilling. Chapter 92. Arrival at Malfoy Manor. Lucius Malfoy's days had grown difficult. Ever since his son had harmed Harry's reputation, Dumbledore had made life hard for him at every turn. Many of the normally loyal pureblood allies had begun to waver under the headmaster's pressure. Lucius, go to bed early. Anything that comes up we can handle tomorrow, Narcissa said as she entered the study, firmly closing the ledger in his hands. I never realized Dumbledore had so much power, Lucius muttered, rubbing his forehead. It's not too late to find out now. Come on, it's late, Narcissa replied, taking his hand. At that moment, a house elf appeared. What is it, Dobby? Lucius asked, irritation in his voice. Having long distrusted the elf, whom he had assigned to guard the front gate, Lucius found Dobby's sudden arrival annoying. Someone wants to see you, but he has no invitation. Dobby came to ask if Master wishes to meet him, the elf replied plaintively, unaware of Lucius's displeasure. Who is it? Do you know him? Lucius asked. Dobby doesn't know him, but he smells a Polyjuice potion, the elf said. The older the family, the more thoroughly house elves were trained. Dobby had remarkable abilities, but Lucius no longer trusted him. It's late, and the visitor is disguised, Lucius. Narcissa tried to dissuade him, but Lucius had already made up his mind. Dobby, wait in the storeroom, Lucius said, then summoned Hera. Protect me. Narcissa wanted to go with him, but Lucius refused. He didn't know the visitor and preferred to be cautious. As he approached the front door, he spotted a figure cloaked in shadow. Furrowing his brow, he prepared to speak, but the figure spoke first. "It's me." Just 2 words, but the tone left no doubt. "Hera, tell Narcissa to prepare the grandest welcome. Don't make a fuss. Open the door." "All right, master." "Yes." Ignoring Hera's confusion, Lucius stepped forward to open the door himself. Hera moved quickly to assist, but Lucius didn't step back, placing his hand on the door. A simple gesture loaded with meaning. "Bring Narcissa. We'll meet in the study. No one else." Lucius nodded and ordered Hera to notify his wife. Soon they reached the study, where Narcissa was waiting. "This is," Lucius began, struggling for words. "Long time no see, Narcissa," the cloaked figure said, pulling back his hood. Narcissa's confusion deepened. She didn't recognize him. "I've changed my appearance, but you should remember me," he said confidently. "You?" Narcissa faltered. Her eyes caught the arrogant confidence in the man before her, sending a shiver through her. You are. It's me, Voldemort." He stepped forward, embraced her warmly, and kissed her cheek. Then his tone softened. "Sorry for troubling you all again." Narcissa was stunned, not by his sudden arrival, but by his words. She had never seen such consideration from him. "How is Abraxas Senior?" Voldemort asked Lucius next. "I should have checked on him sooner." "Father is upstairs, but he's not well. Visitors aren't suitable," Lucius answered cautiously. "Has he not recovered from the backlash of the curse?" Voldemort frowned. He knew exactly what old Malfoy had done. It was closely tied to the moment he unleashed chaos on the wizarding world. "Yes, sir." Lucius began to explain, but was cut off by Voldemort's raised hand. "Call me Voldemort, or sir if you prefer. But Master is out. I don't like that title anymore." Lucius and Narcissa exchanged a glance, hesitant to speak further. Voldemort's reputation for unpredictability was well known, and neither dared test him. "This is an order, Lucius. Tell me about your father's condition." Voldemort's voice carried a sharp edge of impatience. Yes, sir." Lucius still didn't dare speak Voldemort's full name. "A few years ago, my father drifted in and out of lucidity. Lately, he's been completely gone, sometimes even attacking people at random, so—" Voldemort nodded. "I'm not ready yet. Once my body recovers, I'll treat him. Everything he did was for the honor of pure bloods." Pure blood honor. The couple echoed the words in unison, like it was an instinct. Voldemort simply nodded again and said nothing more. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a burlap-wrapped crown. "That is the Ravenclaw diadem?" Lucius recognized it instantly. He was well informed, and there was no question this one was genuine. "I've had it for decades. Used to be hidden in Hogwarts, but that place isn't safe anymore. I'm leaving it with you." He tossed the diadem onto the desk, letting it spin before coming to rest. "Don't touch it lightly. It's as cursed as that notebook." Lucius nodded quickly. He'd never handle anything Voldemort handed him carelessly, but passing it along was another matter entirely. "Draco's improving. He's been holding his own against Percy at school, doing quite well," Voldemort remarked. The couple's faces lit up. Their son was their one comfort in dark times. "There are a few matters to arrange." Instantly their smiles faded. "Azkaban. Deploy our people there. The executioners. Bella's studying animagus transformation. Supply her with Mandrake and the rest. Contact all trusted Death Eaters. They need to learn occlumency, and they'll use that method. Percy should take a short internship at the Ministry over summer, with allies he won't resist." Narcissa, ever efficient, had already taken out a notebook and was recording every instruction. At one point she left briefly to bring some fruit. Voldemort, not usually one for politeness, took quiet note of the gesture. She, in turn, acted as though it was nothing at all. "I need a pensieve now. I won't keep it long. Once I'm done, I'll leave." "It'll be ready immediately, sir." Lucius stood, his wariness replaced with renewed energy. This clear-headed, strategic Voldemort rekindled his hope. Hope for pure blood supremacy, for a wizarding world once again under the Dark Lord's banner. Those thoughts stayed with him as he left to fetch the pensieve. Chapter 93. Dumbledore's Memory, Malfoy Manor, Study. Voldemort touched his wand to his temple, drawing out a single silver thread of memory. Malfoy and his wife were gone now, leaving the room empty except for Voldemort. Kilo was already pouring memories into the pensieve. "It's ready, Master," Kilo's voice echoed in his mind. "Good." Go rest, Voldemort replied. Taking back control, he inhaled slowly and leaned toward the strange, swirling substance. The Grand Malfoy study began to shake. Voldemort's body swayed, instinctively resisting, but in the next instant his consciousness tipped forward. Darkness. Freezing, absolute darkness. His awareness sank deeper, swallowed by a black vortex. Then the whirlpool vanished. He stood in an ancient, elegant room. Across from him a fire burned warmly in the hearth. Ornate portraits lined the walls. Dumbledore was nowhere in sight. Voldemort began to turn. There is no curse on knowledge, Albus. You've been deceived. The voice rang out, fierce and defiant. A handsome young man stood there, both hands raised, speaking with electric conviction. People keep telling you can't, you must believe, you're not allowed, you must obey. Damn it, they spend their whole lives proving how ordinary they are. Every few words, he gestured passionately, striding toward a long table, where a young Albus Dumbledore sat, watching him with shining eyes. The man slammed both hands on the table, the thud echoing in the room, and stared down at Dumbledore. Albus, listen to me. His voice carried a pull that went beyond reason. Even without grasping the full meaning, Voldemort felt himself drawn to it. Those ordinary people, they've had their fill of dull, empty lives, but they preach and preach, trying to drag you down to their level. Reject them, Albus. You're a genius. Reject them. His voice rose, blazing with intensity. Clack. In his excitement, the young headmaster had knocked over a small trinket. The man's eyes flicked to it, his expression softening for a moment. But Dumbledore didn't care. His gaze stayed locked on him, sharp and eager. Gerald, what should I do? Follow your talent, Albus. The man, Gerald Grindelwald, the first Dark Lord, as Voldemort already knew, circled the table, picked up the fallen object, and set it precisely back in place. Talent has given us so much, we only need to follow where it leads. Then Grindelwald slowly extended his right hand. Whoosh! A blue flame rose from his palm, twisting and shifting at will, sometimes forming his own face, sometimes Dumbledore's. I once asked the professors how to control and strengthen this intense flame, Grindelwald said. They called it evil, I don't deny that. But they also spoke of a curse of knowledge that supposedly prevented them from teaching me. Foolish excuse. Dumbledore nodded, though it was clear he didn't fully grasp the concept. Breaking the curse of knowledge is simple, Albus. Freeing the mind, however, is harder. Once you do that, the curse itself becomes trivial. Grindelwald extinguished the flame with a wave of his hand. His right hand circled in the air before settling palm up, beckoning. Use your talent, Albus. Show me the extraordinary in transfiguration. Dumbledore immediately drew his wand, but Grindelwald spoke again before he could act. No, Albus, don't use your wand. That solidifies your ability. Wands are for combat or enhancement, not learning. Dumbledore nodded, lowering his wand, and reached toward the trinket on the table, just as he had in his office earlier. The object began morphing into various small animals. No soul, Albus, your magic lacks soul, Grindelwald said, leaning close to the constantly changing trinket. You must bring your own understanding, your own thoughts, infuse the trinket with soul. I can't do that. Dumbledore said hesitantly. I would never say that, Albus. Never. Grindelwald shook his head and stood. Try, struggle, but use the right method. Circumvent that non-existent curse. For example, he gestured at the morphing trinket. A cluster of intense blue flames hovered in midair, slowly forming a... Voldemort furrowed his brow, recalling the ancient runic meaning of that symbol, Ewaz, representing cooperation. The flames will harm it, Gerald, Dumbledore warned. But the object wrapped in blue flames showed no sign of burning. In fact, it seemed easier to control than before. Albus, wizards don't just channel magic with raw power. They use emotion. Precise emotions allow us to adapt and transform magic, Grindelwald explained. Dumbledore's brow furrowed deeply, as if awakening to a new understanding. Try a different approach, Albus. Don't get trapped by surface appearances. Grindelwald blew gently on the trinket. The blue flames vanished. He pointed again. Ewaz, representing defense. The room merged with the trinket. Dumbledore adjusted it until it took the shape of a shield. Smart choice. Let's see if it's strong enough. Grindelwald swung his wand sharply several times. Magical strikes hit the tiny shield, pushing it back, but leaving no visible damage. Let me try a curse. He cast again, stronger this time, but the shield remained, at most showing minor scratches. Excellent, Albus. You've perfectly integrated the rune's power, Grindelwald praised. Not really, Gerald, Dumbledore said, frustration and disappointment marking his face. If I used these runes myself, the effect wouldn't be the same. Voldemort nodded silently nearby. If Dumbledore's transfiguration revealed the strength of talent, Grindelwald's command of flames and runes revealed the wonders of magic itself. Different levels entirely. The former embodied human ability. The latter transcended it. Chapter 94, Giving Magic Love. I'm sorry, Dumbledore. Grindelwald waved his hand, making the blue flames vanish. Did I make you feel defeated? Dumbledore furrowed his brow, but finally sighed and nodded. Nearby, Voldemort muttered under his breath, facing someone like you who wouldn't feel defeated? Don't fall into the trap of mediocrity, Albus. I simply discovered my path a little earlier, Grindelwald said, stepping forward to sit beside Dumbledore and gently patting his back. Being ahead for a moment means nothing. Perhaps one day you will surpass me. That day has already come. You're locked away in Nurmengard now, Voldemort thought. I want to know, what is your path in magic? Dumbledore asked, regaining some vigor. Integration, Albus, Grindelwald said without hesitation. Giving magic thought, not just emotion. Dumbledore's brow tightened in thought. Voldemort also bowed his head, lost in reflection. He remembered the Grindelwald stove, a magical trial that only those aligned with its ideology could survive. Vita Rosier and Abernathy passed, Queenie suffered, and Clar, who seemed devoted, died. Clar's failure stemmed from doubt and inner conflict, clashing with Grindelwald's ideals. It confirmed Grindelwald's point. Magic can be taught to think. Thought is far too complicated, Galter, Dumbledore said, shaking his head. Though your magic is impressive, I cannot agree. His words drew surprised glances from both Grindelwald and Voldemort. Please explain, Albus, Grindelwald pressed. I think everyone's thoughts are different, and even within the same person, they change over time. If you weave thought into magic for too long... Dumbledore's brow furrowed as he searched for the right word. After a pause, it came to him. Extremism, Galter. It will take you to extremes. Why? Now Grindelwald frowned, and Voldemort leaned in mentally, listening hard. You and I both know dark magic feeds on malicious emotion, Dumbledore said. Thought runs even deeper than emotion. If you bind thought into magic for too long, his gaze softened with genuine concern, then if those thoughts ever fall into darkness or evil, the magic will only amplify them. Voldemort gave a small, firm nod. He didn't reject dark magic, but after enduring its backlash, he understood Dumbledore's point all too well. Grindelwald, however, seemed utterly at ease. His frown faded, and he clapped Dumbledore on the back. How could I be wrong, Albus? You know me. Dumbledore blinked in surprise, then nodded without hesitation, as though conceding he might have been overthinking. If not thought, Grindelwald said, smoothly shifting the topic, then what would you put into magic instead? Voldemort caught the flicker in Grindelwald's eyes. This change of subject was deliberate. Dumbledore, it seemed, did not, though maybe later he did. Old B must have replayed this memory countless times, as Voldemort thought with a faint grimace. Love, Galter. Dumbledore didn't hesitate. Emotion is the foundation of magic. That's enough. We don't need to add deeper thought. Better to choose from among emotions. But how does one do that, Albus? Grindelwald sounded genuinely puzzled. Voldemort was just as lost. Love? Of course, Dumbledore would say that. But love was not power. That old spell of Lily Potter's, did it truly represent power? Voldemort didn't think so. To him, it was about knowledge, heritage, and bloodline. A muggle born like Lily couldn't have created something that ancient alone. The Potter's pure-blood lineage must have been the real source. I'll try, Dumbledore said at last. Maybe I'll create my own magic one day. Or maybe not. Who knows? He gestured toward a decorative object on the table, preparing to demonstrate. Grindelwald and Voldemort both watched closely. Grindelwald uncertain, Voldemort confident. Old B would succeed. After all, this memory was meant to teach something. It wouldn't be here if it were pointless. Sure enough, as Dumbledore released his magic, the object began to shift, reshaping into a slender wooden figure. Full of love, Dumbledore, but fragile. Grindelwald, before he could finish, the little figure lifted its tiny wooden wand and shot out a burst of fire. A wooden transfiguration construct that could actually cast magic? Both Grindelwald and Voldemort stared, wide-eyed, then looked back to Dumbledore, whose eyes now brimmed with tears. "She always used this spell to light the fire when the three of us were cold," he said quietly, his gaze shifting to a spot above the fireplace. Voldemort followed his eyes to a portrait of a beautiful woman with a nameplate beneath, Kendra Dumbledore. Albus's mother, a muggle-born witch killed when his sister Ariana lost control of her magic. "Oh, Albus, forgive me for stirring such memories, but your magic is extraordinary." Grindelwald's voice trailed off as the memory began to dissolve. When Voldemort's mind returned to Kilo's body, he stood frozen for a long time. Grindelwald's idea of giving magic thought and Dumbledore's giving magic love had both unsettled and fascinated him. Never had he seen magic's paths laid out so clearly. Neither Linzuo's soul nor his own had ever been cleansed in such a way. "Damn you! You're still not telling me anything truly useful?" Voldemort thought, though even that came from the part of him that was still himself. Chapter 95. Fireside Conversations. Voldemort returned to Hogwarts with a strange sense of relief. If Kilo had shown him this too early, he wouldn't have learned half as much. And seeing Grindelwald's brilliance firsthand left him oddly satisfied, though the shard of his soul inside him probably didn't share that feeling. "Kilo?" The voice cut through his thoughts, catching him off guard. Too relaxed, too careless. "Headmaster Dumbledore." He turned with a tired smile, not from real fatigue, but to play the part and buy himself a moment to think. "You look exhausted," Dumbledore said. "Coming to me so late, has something happened?" "Thanks for giving me an opening," Voldemort thought, lowering the foot he'd been about to place on the stairs. "I've been reviewing the records of that day," he said as he walked toward him. "I have some questions I'd like to ask." "Not here." Dumbledore brushed snowflakes from his cloak. "It's too cold. Let's go inside." At his words, the statue guarding the headmaster's office shifted aside, and the two of them headed upstairs. A flick of Dumbledore's wand set the fireplace ablaze. "What will you have to drink?" "Hot chocolate, Headmaster. I think you've spoiled me." By now, Voldemort had regained his composure, even smiling up at the portraits of past headmasters. "My mother never liked us having too many sweets," Dumbledore said, conjuring the drinks, "but I found my freedom later in life." Voldemort didn't joke about it. Her early death still weighed heavily in the man's voice, layered in quiet longing. "Smart child, what's on your mind?" Two armchairs appeared by the fire. Dumbledore shed his cloak and sat, motioning for Voldemort to do the same. Voldemort leaned forward, ready to begin. He shared his thoughts about Grindelwald's gas mask metaphor, and asked if his understanding of giving magic thought was correct. Dumbledore praised his insight, and they spent some time discussing, though the conversation ended with a stern warning about the dangers of giving magic thought. "With my limited wisdom, I can't fully grasp the risks," Voldemort admitted, "but Grindelwald's words are compelling." "Even so, compared to Voldemort, he still falls short," Dumbledore said casually. Voldemort gave a mock shiver, trying to look appropriately humble, and replied in disbelief. "How is that possible? There's no need to deceive you, child. They are fundamentally different people." Dumbledore's tone stayed light, as if he were talking to himself. Voldemort will be remembered for dark magic, but Grindelwald will be remembered by history. That stung. Bearing a fragment of his own soul, Voldemort felt a sharp pang of resentment. If he's to be remembered by history, why is his influence weaker than that man's? He asked, unconvinced. "Child, charisma and magic are not the same. Grindelwald never stooped to such means. He had true ideas." Dumbledore finally met Voldemort's gaze, his words striking harder. "Oh, I see," Voldemort said quietly. Though he nodded, his pride burned and he regretted coming. "What's wrong?" "You don't look well," Dumbledore asked. "Contemplating the nature of magic has left me exhausted," Voldemort replied, using it as an excuse. Dumbledore nodded, sipped his hot chocolate, and asked, "So have you gained anything?" Voldemort gave an awkward smile. He had only just begun to see, hardly anything yet. "I find it hard to understand that kind of love," he muttered. Dumbledore nodded, as if he too doubted Voldemort, or rather Kilo, could truly grasp it. "Could you tell me how you did it back then?" Voldemort asked, leaning forward. To give magical objects the ability to wield magic. Honestly, before this, I never dared imagine such a thing. In truth, I can no longer do it myself, Dumbledore admitted, a hint of regret in his voice. Voldemort blinked, surprised. You've studied Grindelwald, so you must know some of my past. Which part? Voldemort asked. Knowing Dumbledore's life spanned over a century, he needed a specific time frame. The time when my mother passed away. Dumbledore leaned back, relaxed but heavy with memory. I know, Voldemort said. At that time, I despised Muggles and resented the Ministry. A 16 or 17-year-old facing his father's imprisonment in Azkaban and losing his mother all at once, there was little room for grace. Voldemort nodded. He knew that history. His own sister had suffered at the hands of Muggles, their father had intervened, and that had led to Azkaban. Trauma had destabilized his sister, her magic spiraling out of control, accidentally causing their mother's death. A chain of tragedy for young Dumbledore. Perhaps Grindelwald's arrival eased some of that turmoil, the tangled love and hatred defining their intertwined lives. Voldemort reflected on his own orphaned years, trapped in sorrow too, but without a Grindelwald of his own. In those circumstances, Grindelwald taught me to embed something in magic, Dumbledore said slowly, recalling younger thoughts. I sensed the danger in merging thought with magic. Dark magic had already proven that. But I chose love. You saw it. I conjured my mother. I even believed a fragment of her soul lingered there. Voldemort tilted his head, noting tears in Dumbledore's eyes. Strange, he was revealing his deepest emotions. Though their talk was about magic, Voldemort long suspected Dumbledore's mind often wandered elsewhere. He seemed more vulnerable, less sharp than usual, a fact Voldemort had noticed from their first meeting. Seeing Voldemort's gaze in confusion, Dumbledore smiled, letting a tear fall unashamed. I visited Nurmengard once, just to glance from afar, he said, then added, sharing knowledge with you today reminded me of an old friend. Clearly he influenced you deeply, Voldemort said awkwardly. Dumbledore nodded. Yes, he shaped my magic. I imagine that means something to you as well, doesn't it? Voldemort watched him, seeing the ceiling and the nostalgia etched across Dumbledore's face. Perhaps age always invites reflection on past glories, just like Moody, he thought, silently nodding. Chapter 96. A discussion on fate. Talking heart to heart with Dumbledore felt strange. I don't quite understand, Headmaster, why you're telling me this, Voldemort admitted after a pause, once Dumbledore had calmed. You're exceptional, Kilo. After your travels, I see wisdom in you, Dumbledore praised generously. Voldemort feigned modesty, though he felt a swell of pride inside. I've heard your theory, the Tasmania effect. It's brilliant. The compliment evaporated any goodwill. So, the old bee is still watching me, huh? You possess wisdom without extremism, courage without recklessness. You know your responsibilities and are brave enough to shoulder them. The praise did little to lift Voldemort's mood. Those under observation never truly trust their watchers. The very act of being watched sets an unbridgeable distance. What confused him most was why the curse had actually erupted. Did it need a specific trigger? Or was something else at play? This question gnawed at Voldemort, keeping him awake for countless nights, pacing and turning over possibilities without finding an answer. He wanted desperately to escape the chains of fate, afraid of walking the same paths his memories showed. The problem left him distracted for weeks. When Hermione asked him to make a home visit, he even refused. Fortunately, no one seemed to notice. Just before Christmas, everyone was a little absent-minded anyway. The holidays arrived quickly. The Great Hall was decorated with garlands of holly and mistletoe, and many students had already left. On the first day of the break, Voldemort chose to leave the school. No explanation needed. Professors were free during Christmas. 36 Hall Street. You're the lady of this house too, Danny. Voldemort guided the vampire Daenerys to the door. By etiquette, we should welcome our guests. Welcome Muggles? Daenerys rolled her stunning eyes. Neither witches nor vampires allow me to do that. Voldemort ignored her complaint and led her to the door. They opened it to greet Bocus and Angela. Is this your wife? Angela's eyes widened. You're incredible. Daenerys gave a polite smile, which made Angela a little awkward. Most wizards look down on Muggles. Vampires even more so, Voldemort said bluntly. Bocus forced a smile, cracking a teasing joke about prejudice to ease the tension. But Voldemort, what does this have to do with vampires? Angela asked. Oh, I haven't introduced her properly. Daenerys is a vampire, a witch-vampire hybrid, Voldemort explained. Bochus and Angela stared in astonishment. Daenerys obligingly opened her mouth to